Yes, people, welcome back to the channel. I hope you're all doing well. I hope you're all good. And thank you for joining me this evening. I hope you're all having a nice evening planned. I hope you're chilled. We're going to talk a little bit about Mikel Arteta and the rumours surrounding the club that he is about to sign a new deal. And it is a new bumper deal. It's a new bumper deal that could see him being the highest paid Arsenal manager of all time. Does he deserve this new deal? We're going to talk about why he does and potentially why he may not. We're going to talk about his future. We're going to talk about the job that he's done so far. We're going to talk about the pros and the cons. We're going to talk about the future, about what needs to still improve under this regime to do that. And that's exactly what we want to be doing at the end of the season, at least with one trophy as well. We've got to be ambitious. Big up to all of you in the chat. I'm literally only just under 800 away from 20K. So please do me a favor, people. You've been flying. The community's growing. We love you all. So please hit that like button and please hit that subscribe button, because that subscribe button can then see us get to 20K. Please help us as a community. Join us. Don't have to join as a member. If you do want to, you can click the join button, but please make sure you hit like and subscribe. We're going to be taking the channel to a new level. We've got new banners. We've got new channel branding. We've got new logo. We're trying to sort things out, people. So make sure you're a part of it. Make sure you support. Make sure you hit that like button and subscribe. And please do that, because it does really help the channel. Also, what I need you to do, behind me, I've got a picture on the canvas of the gun cannon in yellow and blue. You can get them in red and white as well. All you need to do in the description is the email address of russellhogphotography@hotmail.com. All you need to do is drop him a line. Say you know me, say you're a gooner, and he'll sort you one out. All right, people? So make sure you go and do that, because these are in all kinds of colors. And to be fair to him, he doesn't just do canvases. He's done a lot of merch. So make sure that if you are into your Arsenal merch, make sure that you do go and follow him. Now that you've all hit the like and the subscribe, let's get into it. Mikel Arteta. In the next few minutes, I'll be joined by somebody. I'm not going to tell you who that somebody is. I'll keep you guessing. There'll be a special guest coming to join me in the next few minutes to say hello and to talk about this news about Mikel Arteta. Now, there's a lot of reports on Twitter. There's reports in the Mail. There's reports in the Mirror. There's reports on all football sites saying that Mikel Arteta is very close to signing a new deal at Arsenal. And that new deal could see him as one of the highest paid managers in the Premier League, but also of all time at Arsenal Football Club. Now, Arsene Wenger, I think, is probably or was on similar to what Mikel Arteta is actually on now. Now, Mikel Arteta is currently on, from the reports we read, just over £8 million a year. That is what he is on. Now, that's quite highly paid in terms of the other managers in the Premier League, apart from, of course, Jurgen Klopp, who's now gone, who was on £16 million a year. Pep Guardiola is on a astounding £20 million a year, and Pochettino was on 10.5. He's no longer there. Klopp's no longer there. So already Mikel Arteta has outjumped everybody, and is now already currently the second highest paid manager in the Premier League. And it could mean that he can get as close as he can to Pep Guardiola's 20 million a year. Amazing amount of money. I think there's only Simeone who's on more, and I think he's on nearly 30 for Atletico Madrid, because they just love him and have wanted to keep him there for ages. So we're going to talk a little bit about that with the chat. Good to see you all there. Big up Lindsay, big up Ash, big up the assembled, big up Liam, big up my mum, big up Jake, big up Tammy, big up Mina. Who else is there? Sean, Carol, Steve, Shax. Who else have we got? Top MG, Felix. Big up to all of you for being here. Make sure you're hitting that like button, and we do appreciate you all being here so early to support the channel. Listen, it's going to be a really interesting reaction from the fan base, this, because there's a lot of people that are still looking at Mikel Arteta and asking the question, can he get us across the line? And some are saying that with 1 year left on his contract, that actually he doesn't deserve a new deal. He gets that 1 year and then he can just go if he doesn't get us over the line. Some are saying he gets that year to prove himself and then sign a new deal. So where are the chat at? That's what I want to know. Where are you at? Do you think Mikel Arteta deserves a new contract at Arsenal? Yes or no? I'm going to put a poll in there in a minute, a little bit later on, to see if you believe that he is actually worth keeping long-term at Arsenal. Now, there's a lot of people that had concerns about Mikel Arteta, and I was one of them. I had a lot of concerns, not because I didn't like the guy, not because I didn't rate the guy, just because I didn't feel that a process of 4 or 5 years with a manager who, let's be real, hasn't managed before, wasn't what Arsenal Football Club needed. I really didn't believe it was that. I didn't think that was the case. I didn't believe there was enough at the club as we were to believe that he was 100% the right guy. And I think when we had Unai Emery and we went for Mikel Arteta, it was such a mess. And I think that it was needed to someone to come in and completely take the club forward. And I just didn't believe that Mikel Arteta was the guy. I really didn't. I had 18 months of thinking, what is this? Losing at Burnley at home, Villa at home, Leicester at home, Everton at home, Wolves at home. And I was like, stop. This has gone too far. We need to look now at another manager. And then managers passed since then, Carlo Ancelotti's, Thomas Tuchel's, CVs that were quite impressive. Even Mourinho's and Conte's were being spoken about. Allegri's were being spoken about. All these names of coaches that were proven were being spoken about taking over from Mikel Arteta, but the Kroenke stuck with him. And then when we went for that top four, he started to play a little bit more of a brand of football, and everybody was sort of questioned whether he was turning a corner. But I still had question marks over where we wanted to be, because we wanted to be in a title race. We wanted to be challenging. We wanted to be winning trophies, and we weren't doing neither. And we couldn't get across the line in top four. So when we bottled that after literally being favourites for it, I was just like, it just isn't going to work for this guy. It just isn't going to work for this guy. And you can go back and you'll remember me putting doubts in people's minds saying, I don't think we're going to get there. I think we need someone who can be qualified to take us to a title. And then the season after, he shut a lot of people up. He shot people up, doubted him up. He shut up people that actually believed in him because they thought he was going for top four and he went for a title. And he shut a lot of the media up and all the rival fans that were laughing at him up. And I thought, you know what, respect. He's dissembled a club team that looked to be playing for him. There was a clear style of play and we were going for a title. And when we were 8 points clear, I think a lot of people thought he was coming to Arsenal that year. But then I looked at what happened and it was a collapse. It was a collapse. Now, since winning the FA Cup, Mikel Arteta hasn't really respected the domestic cups either. So when you look at it, not only were we throwing cups in the bin, we weren't getting the big guy got their ones over the line either. So there was huge doubt and concern that this guy was the right guy. And there still is to a lot of fan base. And I think until he gets us across the line and shuts all them up, they're not going to shut up. They're still going to question it. Rival fans will still say, what's the process? Fans of Arsenal that don't believe it will get frustrated and say, "What? How long is this going to take to win a title? We've already waited 20 years." So I can kind of see that side of it. And a lot of people believe that's really frustrating or negative or toxic. But all these fans want is to win trophies. And it's not. It takes time, though. Time has been given to Arsenal Football Club. Yeah? So we can't be saying we need to wait another few years. It's ready now. We've got to win now. We've got to win now. And if we're giving a new contract to Mikel Arteta, I want that to be the standard. Win trophies. Not we're giving you another few years to prove so that you can have 10 years at the club before you start winning. Not happening. That can't happen. So for me, and this is just my opinion, I actually wouldn't give him a new deal. I actually wouldn't. Now, that doesn't mean I want him sacked. Doesn't mean we can go now. I actually believe that what we should do is let him see this year out and then make a decision to say, do we want this guy or do we not? Now, some people might think, but he'll go to Man City or he'll go to Real Madrid or he'll go to Barcelona. Yeah, maybe he will one day. He might do that anyway. But I want to win. I want Arsenal Football Club to win, not Arteta to win. Do you know what I'm saying? I'm here for the club, not for the manager. So I'm not going to wait another 5 years for Arteta to finally win a trophy. It needs to happen now. So I'm not saying get rid of the guy. I'm just saying, please do not give this guy a long-term deal that we might think we're kind of stuck again here now and we haven't got across the line in 2, 3, 4, 5 more years. That's just what I would do. A lot of people disagree. That's fine. A lot of people want to say, no, do you know what? He's given enough for me to believe that he is going to win us trophies in the next 4 years and long-term Arsenal will be successful under Mikel Arteta. And that's your opinion, man. And I hope that you're right. I hope you are. This is what I would do. I'd leave it. I'd let Arteta see his contract out. And if he's successful, he'll stay. And he'll sign because he loves the club. right? He likes Arsenal. That's one thing I will say about Mikel Arteta. He will 100% sign a contract that's given to him. So that's what I'd do. If he doesn't win anything next season, you see his contract out, and we go and get Carlo Ancelotti, who wants to leave Real Madrid after next season. Or we look at another manager. That's what I would do. And some people shudder when they hear that. They hate to hear it. Oh my God, no, can't think of life without Mikel. No, you can. Like, let's be real. When you are 70, 80 or 90, if you're still living in this world, he will not be the manager. One day he will go. It will not be a funeral when he leaves. Like there wasn't when Wenger left. Like there wasn't when Graham left. This is a football manager. Managers move on. Gone are the days of 20 years under Wenger and Fergie. That doesn't happen anymore. Yeah. So for me, I think that we give him the season to prove that he can get us across the line. And then, of course, done. Contract signed. He will stay. And brilliant stuff. We're winning again. That's the way I see it. I don't really understand. There's this hatred, it seems, for a section of the fan base that still aren't quite convinced. How can you not be convinced by Mikel Arteta? He's got to win something. Am I convinced that he can get us in a title race? Check. Am I convinced that he's changed the way we play? Check. Am I convinced that he's got one of the youngest squads that looks quite exciting? Check. Am I convinced that he wants to be here and wants to give his all? Check. Am I convinced he can win us a trophy with this side? Not yet. And I don't think that's out of order. I think that's just factual. I would have believed it if I would have seen it by now. He doesn't even get into the finals of these domestic cups. So he's got to start doing that, man. He's got to. Now, people will say, this season he didn't win anything, so he has to go. I think there's context as to why he hasn't won anything this season. I honestly do. And people might see that as an excuse and say that it's, what do they call it? What do they call that word when everyone seems to think that we hate it, but we just think it's funny? It's gone out of my head. Flip-flop. There we go. Oh, you flip-flop. You say that you want him out, you want him in. The reason that I believe that you can have context as to why that he has not won something this year is because he's in a position where we got to the last game of the season, we went out to Bayern Munich, and yes, we didn't respect the domestic cups. But for me, I think there's context as to keep him for this year. But if we end up trophyless, there will definitely be question marks, and there'll be questions we have to consider in relation to his future. I am delighted to be joined by someone now. I don't have to talk on my own anymore. It's beautiful. You all know this person. I was going to keep it as a secret, and I kind of have, really. So I'm not going to introduce him. I'm just going to fling him on screen. Yes, my bro.
Hello. I'm your,
How are we, Julian?
your dirty little secret.
It was a dirty little secret. You are my dirty little secret. How are you, mate?
I'm excited. So when you called me an hour or so ago, I really have been having withdrawal symptoms from talking on pods, watching Arsenal for the last 10 days. I've literally just flown off, had nothing to do with anything red and white, was actually barred from speaking to people at AFTV and the like for the last 5-6 days by my girlfriend, who said she can at least have 5 days off on a holiday without the mention of anything Arsenal related. So the first thing I needed to do when I got back was talk to you. So brilliant.
Well, mate, it's a pleasure to have you on, mate. First time on the channel, and trust me, it won't be the last time, mate. It's good to have you on. I haven't spoke to you for a while about Arsenal, so let's get into it. The news is that Mikel Arteta is signing a new deal, my friend. Highest paid Arsenal manager ever. Rumours of £10 million a year. He's currently on about 8.5. I just wanted to get your instant reaction from that. It looks like it's going to happen. There's a lot of rumours from the Mail, from the Mirror, from a lot of streams saying, and shows and Twitter and God knows what, that he's going to sign. It's been offered to him and it looks like he's going to sign. I don't know how long term it will be, but definitely a contract that will see him here for a few years. So what's your thoughts, bruv?
Well, the first thought that comes to mind when you mention that kind of money is that it's absolutely ludicrous that anyone that's on, what do you say, 8.9 million a year? That contract was only signed, if I remember, I think it was announced just when we got hammered by Spurs, wasn't it? When we missed out on top four. To then give anyone an increase when they're on that kind of salary seems absolutely ridiculous and obscene. Absolutely obscene. So that's my first reaction, which you may be surprised about, because I am an Arteta fan, but I think the money that's involved with football is obscene. I think that's the first word that comes to mind. However, the other side of it is that is the reality of the modern game. That it doesn't surprise me that he's the best ever paid manager for Arsenal, because it's a sign of the times. If you look back over the years, then the incremental increases in salaries across the game have been astronomical. So it's not really a kind of big deal to say that he's going to be, or he is, the highest paid Arsenal manager, because that's just more of a sign of the times.
Mm. Well, listen, let me bring this comment up because this does make me laugh. We've got Don Mafia, who has said negative Dan Potts versus positive Julian. Am I negative or ultra negative? And are you positive or ultra positive? Who's more negative or more positive out of me and you, do you reckon? Like, you know what I mean? What way is it going? Am I more of a negative
Yeah,
or are you more of a positive positive?
I'm pretty positive, and the reason I'm pretty positive is because I just like to enjoy it. And for me, the the pleasure in watching football is the belief that they're going to win. And other people, and I have to say that you're more like my father, in as much as he'll always kind of not want to get excited about anything, not want to build anything up, because he doesn't want the disappointment of the failure. So if he keeps his expectations low, then it protects himself against what the reality could well be, in as much as you don't quite realize your expectations. Whereas I've always been one to just want to enjoy the moment, and I'll deal with the fallout at the time if there's a fallout. Now, I've always kind of noted yourself as being someone that tries to keep more grounded,
Mm.
and doesn't let himself get carried away with what he sees. And also, in one respect, yes, I've noted your negative, but then again, that's in relation to myself. And I've often heard people being far more negative without actually being able to back it up. Because one thing you always do, and I noted this, I think the first time we met, which was towards the end of lockdown, wasn't it?
Yeah,
It was the last game that they let, or the first game they let crowds into.
yeah.
If I remember back, wasn't Christmas? I think it was Brighton,
Brighton.
and
Yeah.
I listened to your fan cam at the time, and I thought it was very eloquent, because even though I disagreed with it, you actually put the points across very well and justified them. So I don't think I'd portray you as negative. I just say you're less positive than myself, but one thing you do is justify your position. And also, as things have improved, you've definitely moved with the times as well, because, as you said, you're not anti Arteta, you're pro Arteta, because what he's done over the last few years, I don't think anyone that's got any realistic expectations of Arsenal are anything other than positive, because there's been an upward trajectory.
And I think the best way I can answer this, right? People say to me quite a lot, Dad, are you Arteta in or you Arteta out? I'm Arsenal in, mate. I don't care about who manages the football club. I want Arsenal winning trophies, whether that's with Arteta, whether it's with bloody Jurgen Klopp, whether it's with Ancelotti, or whether it's with Kieran McKenna, the Ipswich manager. I don't really care who the manager is. I never have. I've always wanted to win trophies. And when I look like we're going to be challenging for trophies and winning trophies, I'm happy. And when we're not, I question why that doesn't happen. And I don't think that's being negative. I just think that's being real. I think there's always going to be a question mark as to why you didn't win something. Now, I'm not going to sit there and say if we win a treble or why I didn't win a quadruple. I'm not a deluded fan, right? But at the same time, if we don't win trophies and we don't win a Premier League, I'll always question where it went wrong, or look at how we can improve to make things better. And that's where I'm at right now. I think 100% Mikel Arteta deserves next season. I don't saying he deserves a new long-term contract, but I think he deserves next season to show that he can get us across the line. There's a lot of rumours, Julian, that Pep Guardiola might be leaving after next season. And then a lot of people are suggesting that Arsenal and Arteta will then be able to go and win stuff. So I wanted to ask you before we come back to this deal, the Pep Guardiola situation. Do you feel, what do you make of the people that say we can't win because Pep Guardiola's here? Because I think it's nonsense personally. But what do you think to those fans? Because there's quite a lot that are saying, well, until Pep goes, we can't win anything. But this season he won the Premier League and that was it. The other three trophies were won by somebody else. So I don't really understand that when people say
Yeah,
that.
but he was, look, if you take the League Cup out of it, then he went out to Real Madrid on penalties. So that's, whenever it gets to penalties, it is a lottery. And I truly believe that the winner of that Real Madrid Man City game will be the winner of the Champions League. So I would say it was pretty close to win the Champions League. The FA Cup I actually watched, and it was an off day for them. I mean, Manchester United, whatever you say about them, they've spent a lot of money. They do have good players, and they hadn't played well for some months. But it was almost like they were storing up the performance for when it counts. And when it counted was Saturday's FA Cup final. So I think they didn't play well, Manchester City, on that particular day, but Man United played the best Man United could play. So he was one game away, one performance away from winning the double. Now, what did he win? He won the Premiership title. And Arsenal, for me, did tremendously well. They got 89 points, which was an improvement. They were 1 point shy of what the Invincibles achieved. They were 2 games better off winning than the Invincibles. If I look back at times when Arsenal did win the league, they won the league in '89, that famous trip to Anfield, with only 76 points. So Arsenal did amazingly well, but Manchester City hit a level and consistently hit a level which really is quite unprecedented. The level that Manchester City are at, take away the reasons for it. I think we've discussed that, and I'm sure that discussion will carry on as the court case nears completion. But Manchester City, as a football team and as a football club, in the times that I've been watching football, and I'm nearly 53 years old now, my first game was in 1976, I don't think I've seen a team as consistently good as Manchester City. So I can understand the opinion that until Pep goes, then no one else is going to win anything. But the other side of that is we were only 2 points away from winning it. You can look at all those reasons why we didn't win it, all those games, the Aston Villa first half where, Trossard misses from a few yards. The performance we actually put in against Aston Villa in that first half, I thought was one of the best halves of football that we've played all season. Ironically, you could argue that it's the half that lost us the league. Losing away to Fulham, that's unexpected. Giving away, the Zinchenko giving a needless corner away in the last few minutes against 10-man Fulham. So there were so many what-if moments, which are always going to happen in football. But the reality was, with all the what-if moments both ways, it was a very, very close what-if performance by Arsenal and City, that it was close. So if it's that close and it can be decided by such a small margin, then with Pep there, Pep will be there next season. We can win it. Will we win it? We've got to perform at a high level. He's undoubtedly probably the best coach that's ever been seen in the Premier League era.
Well, he is. For me, he's the best that I've seen in my era. I think he's better than Fergie, and I'm not going to say he's a better Premier League manager than Fergie, but what I will say is that he's a better manager because he's changed football. I honestly don't believe Pep Guardiola. I don't know another manager that's changed football like Pep Guardiola in terms of European football. I know Wenger changed English football, and people will look at Ferguson in that respect as well. Some might look at Klopp at that as well in relation to what he's done in the Premier League and Mourinho. But Pep Guardiola doing it in Spain, in Germany, and in England. Everybody now wants a goalkeeper that can play out from the back with his feet. Nobody wanted that until Pep did it. Nobody wanted to play out from the back with their defence until Pep did it. Nobody knew what an inverted fullback was until Pep Guardiola did it. Nobody wanted to play 4-3-3 until Pep Guardiola. Nobody wanted to play a false 9. Nobody knew what the hell it was until Pep Guardiola. Nobody understood what tick-attacker football was until Pep Guardiola. So I look at all those things and I think that is why he's the best, because everybody's trying to copy him. Even we are. We're trying to copy his style of play. Arteta's trying to. He's learned off of him. That's why I would put him as the best. What I don't agree with is when fans say he can't be beaten, because Conte beat him, Klopp beat him. This season, Ten Hag bloody beat him in a one-off game, as did Real Madrid, as did, who did they lose to in the League Cup? Newcastle. And then obviously in the Europa League in Arsenal's last few seasons, Pep Guardiola wasn't there. So it's not about, oh, you can't beat Pep. Well, Pep Guardiola wasn't even playing against us some of those competitions. So we need to get across the line, Jules. That's what I'm saying. And I think as well, Drew, like people say, like I'll give you two options with this Mikel Arteta thing, right? Do we let him see out his last year and then decide what to do? Or do we keep him now and give him like a 3-year deal? What would you do? What do you think is justified to do?
All right. Well, the first thing I wanted to add to what you were saying
Oh, go on. Go on, yeah,
about
go on.
teams and managers that have beaten Pep. I know we didn't beat them in the Premier League, but we did take 4 points off them and still beat them in the Charity Shield. So we did get on the one-on-one games. We absolutely got the better of them this season. I think they only scored one goal, didn't they? And that was in the Charity Shield.
Yeah,
So
and that was by Cole Palmer, who's gone to Chelsea now.
yeah, so I think in a one-on-one game, there's no doubt he can be beaten. So would I give him the contract? Now, the first thing I've said to begin with, I think the money on offer is ludicrous, it's obscene, and that no one on that kind of money should be looking at an increase in salary because they're on too much to begin with. However, the reality is that's what the Premiership managers earn. As you said, I think Pep Guardiola's on 20 million. The guy that's coming in for Liverpool's on something similar. I think Klopp was on 15 million. So when you actually look at the money on offer and you compare it to other managers at similar teams and performing, probably you can argue that they haven't performed as well as Arteta, then that is the market value. So the reality is, if you don't give them market value, then they could walk. And one thing that you could well find, and the precedent I will give is what happened with Ferguson some years ago, is Ferguson announced that he was going to retire from Man United. He was going to leave Man United, but he wanted to have that last season. And the performances of Man United that season were dramatically reduced. He became what's, in presidential terms, a lame duck president, a lame duck manager. Is that when the players know that the manager is on his way out, there has been a drop in performance. And with the rumours around Pep at the moment, that a lot of players, that they like stability. And if you don't give them the stability, and that manager's off at the end of the year, you could just have a 2-3% drop off in performance or attitude. And we've seen in how close the Premier League is, that could be more than enough for them to lose. So it could well be that with the 115 charges hanging over them, and also the fact that Guardiola's not committing, then Manchester City's performances could, and I'm not saying for definite, could be reduced by a few percent this coming season, which will be enough for another team to nip in and win it. The flip side to that is that if you've got Arteta with 1 year to go and you have the similar rumours around Arsenal and you don't have the stability, then what you've got is less of ability to tie down players on longer term contracts, which you want. And Arsenal have been quite successful this season in tying down their major assets to longer term contracts. The other side of it is, if you've got players that you want to bring in and the manager hasn't committed to the long term future, then players, again, they want the manager that's bringing them in, the manager that's showing commitment to want to bring them to the club, to be committing also long term. So I think it's really important, whoever the manager is, whether it's Arteta or anyone else, that you've got stability at the club. So I don't think we can go into the coming season with running down his contract into the last 12 months. So I would say, even though I think the money's obscene, without even going into the performance of Arteta, you have to tie the manager down to a longer term contract. And you can't afford to go into a season running down that contract. So it's going to be renewed at the end of the season when the contract's up.
I think if we did keep Arteta on his current deal and we didn't renew him in the summer, if people come in for him, clubs come in for Mikel Arteta, do you think he'd stay at Arsenal if he was offered that contract? So what I mean by that is, if we let it run down, and then we say, right, do you know what? We've decided we do want to keep you, and we're going to offer you that deal now. There's obviously that potential for him to say, no, I'm going to go to another club because you haven't tied me down before that. But do you think he would? Or do you think he would be loyal to the club in a way that perhaps Arsene Wenger was, I suppose?
It's a good question, and only he knows the answer to that. But one thing I would say is that we can't look at these guys, whether they're players, managers, club officials, as Arsenal fans. But they weren't brought to Arsenal when they were 6, 7 years old. They weren't taken by their fathers or whoever took them when they were little boys or little girls. Now they are professionals. This is a career for them. And my biggest fear with Arteta and what's going on at Manchester City, if Guardiola is going to leave, then the obvious replacement would be Arteta, because as you said, he's worked with him. He's worked at Manchester City before. He's then gone out and shown himself to not just be Pep's co-man, but someone that can manage a football club very effectively and turn it around. He would be the obvious candidate. And if we've then got to compete with Manchester City, and Manchester City come in and give a ridiculous offer, which they could well do, and he's obviously got an affiliation with Manchester City because he's been there before. I wouldn't say he hasn't got an affiliation to Arsenal, but there's a number of reasons and a number of risks associated with that he could walk to not only Manchester City, to anywhere. He could go to Barcelona. He could go to Real Madrid. He could go anywhere he likes if he has a good season with Arsenal. We don't tie him down, because reality of football is it is a business. So you have to tie down your major assets. And of all the players and the transfers that we all want to see, and tying down players to contracts, I think the most important person you need to tie down to a contract for stability that then gives a springboard to do everything else is the manager. So I think it's really necessary for us to tie him down. I think he will be tied down to this contract. I can't see Arsenal allowing him not to be, because it brings too much instability.
Well, it's interesting because it looks like he's going to be signing, I should say. Let's look at the moment at what every Premier League club manager is on. Now, some of these managers obviously are no longer here. Pep Guardiola is on £20 million a year, which is mad. Arteta is looking to be earning half of that, which is, we believe, around £10 million a year. Pochettino was actually on 10.4 million. He's now been sacked. I don't know what that Maresca is going to be on. I imagine it's quite a lot, but I wouldn't have thought it was as much as Pochettino, but I could be wrong with Chelsea. You never know. Ten Hag is on 9 million a year. That Arne Slot, who's come at Liverpool, is on 6.85, so just under 7, let's say. Sean Dyche is on 5 million. Ange Postecoglou's on 5 million. And then it drops down to 4 million with Thomas Frank, Glasner, Eddie Howe, Unai Emery, who I thought was on more than that. I don't know if that's right, because I saw something else that he was on more than that, but fair enough. And then it drops down and down to some of the other managers. So we're talking about him being the second highest, Julian, in the league. Do we think that's about right?
Yeah. I mean, to me, when you take Pep out of it, he's been the last 2 seasons, he's been the second best manager, because he's managed the second best team. And there's an argument to say, with the resources that he's had, you could argue with the upward trajectory that Arsenal have had. I mean, City have been consistent. What Pep's done, he's taken them to a level, a very high level, and kept them consistent, which is phenomenal. Because one thing I've not seen an Arsenal team ever do is, I've seen them rise to the top, but I've not seen them maintain that. I've never seen Arsenal reclaim the championship at any time. I've seen them win it, then I've seen them lose it, then I've seen them win it again. But I've never seen them retain it. And one thing Pep's done now is he's won it 4 times in a row. So I think undoubtedly he's the best manager. But I think there's a very strong argument to say, regardless of everyone else in the league and their resources, that Arteta's shown himself to be the second best. So on that rational basis, you've got to give him the second highest salary.
I mean, it's a lot of money, as you said it rightly at the start. I wanted to bring this up, though, Joe, because this comes in from Troy. Troy's not very happy with Mikel Arteta. He doesn't believe he's the correct man for the job, it seems. But he said facts about what we was talking about in relation to the doubts. He says Arteta will have gone at least half a decade without a trophy. Do you understand, or at least consider what people are saying when they say that we need to win something with this team? Because he did win the FA Cup, but it was with players that he has since got rid of. Do you think that is going to be the biggest kind of question mark over what Arteta can do in terms of being a proven winner at Arsenal. Does he need to get across the line, even if it's domestic cup, Julian?
Yes. I mean, you have to make the decision of what's important. Is it a trophy? Because football, again, is about finances. And for us fans, I heard the discussion who had a better season, Arsenal or
Oh yeah.
Manchester United. And there is a strong argument to say that Manchester United have had a better season because they actually won a trophy and they lifted something at the end of the season. They had success. But the reality of football is that for long-term success, it's based on finances and the amount of money on offer for to win the FA Cup is pretty minuscule. I think it was something like £2 million they got for winning the FA Cup. Whereas for coming second, I think last season, Arsenal received 26 million. And on top of that, you then get the opportunity to increase your revenues through the Champions League qualification, which is imperative to the running of the club, and then being able to compete financially. And also nowadays, now that they've started to really kind of impose the FFP and profitability and sustainability, it gives you the option to be able to keep within those rules. Because if you don't, then you've got points docked. So yeah, I think it's I think it's incredibly important that you do maintain success, and I understand why the domestic trophies aren't considered by the clubs to be as important as they used to be. Although for fans, they've still got that magic. So he has basically. I mean, I just heard just as I was coming on, you said that you thought he disrespected the domestic cup competitions. Well, I think there's a good argument for the League Cup on that.
Yeah. West Ham away, that was awful.
West Ham away, even Brentford away.
Yeah.
He played a second string team for both of those. We played okay at Brentford, but I think the game was like a lot of games. When you win, you look back at it with rose-tinted glasses. And it wasn't that great a performance. We scraped a win at Brentford, and they played an unstrength team as well. At West Ham, it was pretty terrible. It was one of the worst performances I've seen Arsenal, apart from Fulham away, and we deserve to lose. So yes, he disrespected. You can argue that he disrespected the League Cup, but the League Cup's worth £500,000 to win it. No, it's not. I think it's 100 grand or something. It doesn't even register. It's a week of Eddie Nketiah to win the League Cup. That puts that one into perspective. As regards the FA Cup, I disagree with you. I mean, the one game we're involved in was Liverpool. I thought we were very unlucky to lose that. I thought we played a good Liverpool team, but also got lucky on the day. And that game could have gone either way.
I think the domestic cups in the last couple of years since he's won one, I think it's been embarrassing, if I'm honest. I think it has. I think losing to Forest and losing to Southampton. Okay, we lost to Man City last year in the FA Cup and Liverpool this year, so you could probably give him a little bit of leeway there. But in the League Cup, West Ham, last year, Brighton at home. Year before that, I think we got pummeled by Manchester City because we had that Runnison guy in goal we bought. So we've had some poor League Cup and FA Cup performances. FA Cup performance against Liverpool at the home, I agree with you. We actually weren't terrible. We should have scored more than 3 goals. It was actually like, I think we hit the bar, the crossbar, and a missed sitter in the first 25 minutes. It was ridiculous. Yeah. Should have been killed off. So I'll give you that one. I will. 100%.
And also Manchester City, the season before, I thought we were unfortunate. I thought we were actually the better team. We lost 1-0 at City to that one. Yeah. So I would agree with the first few seasons after we won it. Southampton during lockdown, I don't even remember that game. But the fact we lost to Southampton, then you've got to question that one. The season after that, who did we get? Forest. Forest was abysmal.
It was.
Yeah, no, I remember that one.
It's whenever we wear that white shirt, the
Yeah.
say no to red. Whenever we wear that shirt, we lose, don't we? What is
Well,
going
I
on?
think there's probably more to it than the colour of the shirt. But look,
No, but you know what I mean. Like, if you're
I'll,
superstitious, like,
I'll give you the Southampton one, and I'll definitely give you the
Forest,
Forest one.
yeah.
But Man City and Liverpool, I don't think he did disrespect it. But yes, they're not interested in the League Cup. That's the reality of that competition. It's just
Well, that's a nice segue into this super chat from George. Big up George, man. George Gooner, what a legend. He's put in a super chat. Top man, really appreciate you, mate. He says, I think the Cronkies need to push him next season to win a trophy. It's almost like they're saying, you're safe as long as we progress. At the end of the day, no employee will go the extra mile unless he's pushed by his employers. This is a really interesting question for me because I wanted to ask you about the Cronkies. They've been silent again, the fan base, about the Cronkies because when we do well, they're okay with them. When we don't win, they want them out. You know, it's kind of like that with a manager, I suppose, with some fans. They're quite sort of fickle. However, I think there's certain fan bases that have remained consistent. I think myself, Russ, who's in the chat, I think Turkish, I think some of the others have sort of said, look, you know, we need to show some ambition. And to be fair, the ambition hasn't been there to win trophies because we've been okay to do a progress, go from eighth, fifth, second, not win trophies, not win the league. And I think it is a good question mark that if we don't start to see trophies, should the Cronkies be putting more pressure on Mikel Arteta in the next couple of years if we don't lift a trophy or silverware?
Okay. Well, to me, it is the Cronkies that are driving
Yeah.
the success or non-success in domestic trophies. Because I would think that the Cronkies are pushing for the Premier League and also the Champions League because that's where the money is, as we've discussed. The FA Cup and the League Cup are immaterial to the owners when you look at the actual finances behind what you gain from actually winning those two competitions. So they're just not unimportant. The only importance is what the fan base are pushing for. And if the fan base, being the end customers, are pushing for a trophy, then that pressure propagates itself down. But then the other side of it is the majority of fans these days, and this is one thing I've learned from going on the summer tours, is that to me, I've grown up watching Arsenal. I've been lucky enough to always live within a few miles of the ground. But the vast majority of Arsenal fans have never even been to the UK.
Mm.
So they're watching through broadcasters internationally. They're still buying their merchandise. They're still Arsenal fans and are contributing towards the success of the team. And they're pushing to watch Champions League football. And they're pushing for Arsenal to win the Premier League. They're obviously not pushing enough for Arsenal to win the FA Cup or the League Cup. Otherwise, that trickles down. So I would say that it is the Cronkies that are driving it, and that the kind of pressure Arteta's been put under, which is shown and illustrated by the teams he picks for, especially the League Cup. They're second string teams.
Mm.
But then
And I
saying
think,
that, they've managed to build a squad where the second string team is still pretty decent.
I mean, listen, don't get me wrong, right? Mikel Arteta has got us challenging. The Cronkies have backed him. The project has progressed. But it's time to win now. It's time to get across the line with this side. There's a lot of money spent on this side. There's a lot of patience. We've already waited 15 years before this process started to win a Premier League. It's now 5 more years. It means it's 20 without a Premier League title. That's too long for Arsenal Football Club. It's 31 years without a League Cup. That's too long for Arsenal Football Club. It's 31 years without a European trophy. That's too long for Arsenal Football Club. So the FA Cup is our cup. We've got 14 of them. What I don't like is when there's a certain section of the fan base that go, I don't want FA Cups. We've got enough of them. Well, you can't say it's our trophy. We've got 14 of them. Laugh at Spurs for not winning it and going, I don't really want an FA Cup though. For me, I want them all.
Yeah.
I think we should be challenging on all 4 fronts, Drew, this season, right? Going into this next one, I think we should have a summer window that allows us to have a squad that can compete with all 4 of the trophies. And I just want to get your kind of thoughts or your confidence on whether you think this summer the window will close and we'll go, wow, that's a good summer. Like we've got what we needed to go on all four fronts now, or if you still think maybe we'll be left a little bit short. I mean, I know the money situation doesn't help with FFP and PSR, but are you anticipating a strong window for Arsenal?
Well, I think the difference now to a few seasons ago was that we needed major surgery. It was pretty obvious from the performances that we were witnessing, the fact that we were coming eighth in the Premier League, is that we were a long way from being able to compete. Now, what he's done is he's got us competing again. So we're close, as we've said. We were 2 points away. We were one game. You know, you can pick any one of a number of games that we could have converted from a draw to a win or a loss to a win, and we could have won the Premier League. So I don't think we need major surgery. And the other side of it is that the vast majority of our squad is young and improving. So we should actually be a year better than we were. We've not got an aging squad. There's very few players that are on a downward trajectory rather than upward. So the most important thing is to keep the core of the team, which from the contract work they've done over the last couple of seasons, I think they're in a very good position to do so. Because if anyone wants our main players, they've got to come in and spend outrageous money to do so, which I don't think is going to happen. It's up to Arsenal to decide that they want to sell. So there's only a few positions that probably need strengthening. I would say that, especially with the injury record that Partey's had, is that Partey, if they get any sort of offer at all, that Partey will probably go. El Neni didn't play any games really the last few seasons, and for me, he was pretty substandard. I know people are looking at him now and sort of looking at him in glowing terms, but you know, he was one of the few players. He came in at 7 million, and I think he was never worth anything more than 7 million. He was basically just a squad player.
Yeah.
We probably need another reinforcement in that position that allows Rice to be able to play further forward when necessary. Because one thing that I didn't realise before Rice signed was how good he is in a forward position.
Yeah.
So,
Number 8. Yeah.
sort of in the number 8 position. So I think we probably need another number 6. And again, we need to raise the levels. And it's difficult, as we've seen in the controversy of when they brought in Raya. When you've got a goalkeeper of the quality of Ramsdale, you're not going to get anyone much better. And in the same way, the quality of our squad now is so much better than the quality of the squad was when Arteta came in. So actually to improve what we've got is going to be significantly harder than what it was when he came in. So I think it is tricky that there's not that many players available that you can get to actually improve where we are because we're that good.
I think we've got to be ruthless now in certain positions. I think it might be that we look at a couple of players and go, oh, I don't really want to lose him, but I understand why we have to. Might be that it's Smith Rowe, might be that it's Partey, might be that it's Tierney, Ramsdale. If you like Nelson and Eddie, it might be that it's those. I think we've got to be ruthless now. I don't think we can be sentimental and keep kids that have been here just because they come from our academy. If they're not good enough, like Arteta clearly doesn't think they are because he's not trusting them on the bench, we've got to replace them and upgrade them. And I think Eddie, I think Nelson, potentially Vieira or Smith Rowe, one of. I think Partey is a mention in terms of his fitness. There's talk of Zinchenko. There's talk of, Tierney, Tavares, Lokonga, all these players. I just think we've got to be ruthless and I think we've got to try and get them gone and bring in the players that we think can actually strengthen our bench, Julian, because Manchester City have actually not got a massive squad. People think they've got 30 players of quality. They actually don't. They've got like 19 or 20 players that are top quality. And that's what we need to do because we've only really got to say 14 or 15 that are top quality. So we're still 3, 4, 5 short. That's what I want to see in the summer. So I wanted to ask you, like, in terms of some of the players or positions, I should say, of where you think that we should be bringing in. Because there's a question here from Mike earlier on that says, what's the main priority position that you think we need sorted this summer? So I'll ask you that, mate. What do you reckon?
Well, if you'd asked me 6 months ago, I would say striker. But with the way Havertz has kind of upped his game and and played that position. And also, the other question mark is over Jesus. That if Jesus can get over this knee injury, to have that kind of quality, those two rotating for that position. And also, what I like about them both is that they're different types of players. So you talk about a plan B,
Mm.
and they're so different. So I would say if we had to strengthen in one position, with the fact that Partey is the wrong side of 30 and his injury record isn't great, and that we can't really rely on him for next season. If he stays fit, then that would be a bonus. Then I would say the number 6 position, which again gives Rice some competition, but also allows him to fluctuate into the number 8 as well.
I would say that I agree with Chaitanya in the chat. Let me bring the comment up. I don't think there is one main priority. I think both of these are as important as each other, and I'll tell you why. I think the left-hand side of our club at the moment, or our team, should I say, is a little bit ski-whiff. I don't think it's as sustainable as our right-hand side, and I think that's been quite clear. I don't think there's been a settled left-hand side at Arsenal all season. There's been injuries to Timber, which has allowed us to switch our left back pretty much every game, whether it's Tomiyasu, whether it's Zinchenko, whether it's Timber for a game, whether it's Kivior playing there. That needs to be sorted. Hopefully it will be if Timber stays fit. The left-sided midfield role, the number 8 that we like Declan Rice in, has been played in so many number of different positions. Havertz started there, Vieira played there a bit, Smith Rowe a bit, Rice has played there a bit. We've even seen, I think, wasn't it one game, Trossard come into that position and was switching with Havertz for a bit. That was completely changed. And then Martinelli and Trossard have been switching it on the left-hand side pretty much the whole season. On the right-hand side, though, I think we've got Saliba and Ben White set in stone. I think we've got Ødegaard and Saka set in stone.
Yeah.
And if we was to get a left-sided central midfielder and a centre forward who actually is a number 9 that we know starts, I think we are pretty much sorted to go for a title. I really do. And that number 9 and the left-sided centre-back needs to be proper starters. So that doesn't, for me, I think it might be harsh to say to Havertz, you're now on the bench. But it's not about you 11 sit on the bench and you 11 start for me. It's about, I'm going to play these 11. Please feel free to prove me wrong and get yourself in the mix. And I think that's what Havertz did, if I'm honest. And that's what players like Martinelli have done in the past. And he wasn't a starter. Now he is. Saka, he had to fight his way in until he cannot no longer be dropped. Gabriel Jesus was a starter. He's no longer a starter. Zinchenko was a starter. He's no longer a starter because these players have got in front of them. And I think that when you start with that 11, it doesn't mean you end with that 11. It means that the players on the bench have then got to work hard to get back into that squad. So for me, I think a left-sided central midfielder like a Bruno Guimaraes and a centre forward, if it can't be Isak, who everybody wants because he's too much, then you go and get Gyökeres or Tony or Sesko, whoever it is you're linked with. I think those two positions are massively key. I really do. So I would be disappointed if we don't get a number 9 and another central midfielder this summer, Julian.
Yeah, I would. 2 players you mentioned from Newcastle, for me, would be the dream too. If you could bring in 2 players, it would be those 2. I think a lot relies, when you talk about the left-hand side, I totally agree with you. I think Martinelli suffered for the fact that he couldn't really build a relationship with any particular player. Because when you look at the right-hand side, it always takes a while for relationships to form. And what you're seeing with Saka, Ødegaard, and Benjamin White is the result of a very settled team and a very settled right-hand side. And on the left-hand side, the moment, I thought from seeing Timber in pre-season and during the Charity Shield that Timber, I thought, was going to be competition for Ben White on the right-hand side. But it became evident as pre-season went on that he was being played on the left-hand side. And if he'd stayed fit, then maybe Martinelli would have had a much better season because he would have become established with that relationship with him. So, look, if Timber can stay fit, where do you play him? Because I think that guy is a starter from the limited amount of games that I saw him play. And if he becomes a starter, then what position is open? It's got to be the left side of defence because the other 3 positions seem pretty much nailed on at the moment.
Yeah,
they're playing. So if you get him starting at the left-hand side, at left back, Martinelli then starts to build a relationship with him, and then you've got Trossard that can come in as, we're talking about, you've got to have players of a certain quality to come on. And one thing I think Trossard's proven in the last 6 months is that he's of that sufficient quality to be able to be one of our squad players in the same way, Manchester City, as you said, have got these 19 phenomenal players that can fit in. He's one that can fit in. So I think then it all relies, that left-hand side relies on him. But then if you bring in Bruno in that position to also be able to sort of fit in, and then that releases Rice to be able to play number 6 and number 8 when necessary, I think you've got enough. But then, it depends on the injuries. You can get decimated. I mean, Newcastle had a great team. Man United had a great team, but they were decimated. One thing Arsenal didn't suffer from much this season was injuries. Apart from Timber, and Partey, yes, we had a few injuries, but none of them were long term. Apart from those two, unless I'm forgetting anyone.
No, you're not. And Timber, for me, that was such a cruel injury, man, because he looked so good in pre-season. I thought he was man of the match in the Community Shield.
Yep.
And then to do that in the first game against Forest and to be out for that long was mad. And I think you will see someone, as Arsene Wenger used to say, who is seen as a new signing next season because, well, he is. He's a new signing we haven't seen yet. And it's mad to say that, and people might think that's an excuse, but it's not. That's just factual. Like, he is going to be, hopefully anyway, with the squad and able to be available at least. And that's really, really key. I wanted to talk about the situation with the subs bench because there's a problem with the subs bench still. A lot of people talk about that being an issue. And I think it has been, mate, to be fair. I look at the subs bench that we were putting on and I was just looking at Reece Nelson and Fabio Vieira and Eddie Nketiah. And Arteta was looking at it in the same way as we were. We don't really want to use any of them. We don't want to be taking Saka off and putting on Eddie or Reece Nelson. We don't want to be taking off Odegaard and putting on Vieira. It just weakens your side. So if we start to look at a couple of positions, let's just say we sign a striker and a midfielder like we all seem to think that we need, right? We're going to potentially have a bench that could consist of Trossard, Havertz, Jesus, Tomiyasu, Partey, if he stays, Zinchenko, if he stays, and potentially the goalkeeper. And then there's a chance to have Smith Rowe and then another signing that we might buy in the summer. That's actually quite a strong bench.
You're also forgetting Fabio Vieira.
Well, we don't know what's happening with Vieira. We don't know if he's staying or going or what. But
I mean, I would think that next season you won't have Fabio Vieira and Smith Rowe. I think I think one of them will go.
Yeah.
And I think it will probably be Smith Rowe.
Okay.
Because of the money that they can probably get for him. But
would you though? Who would you get rid of though out of those two? Because I'd get rid of Vieira because I'm not sure.
Yeah, I mean, from an emotional point of view, and I don't think we should forget we are fans. Is that you'd want to keep Smith Rowe because you've seen him grow up, and the word is that there could be some issues with Vieira's attitude in training, and that's one of the reasons why he hasn't been trusted. That he's had even less minutes than Smith Rowe. He did have an injury, but he's been fit for the majority of the season. And it was very interesting in that last game of the season against Everton when we 1-0 and we needed that goal, and he turned to Smith Rowe. So if I could choose one to stay, it would be Smith Rowe, but you'd probably get more money for Smith Rowe than you would Vieira, because Smith Rowe at least has achieved in the Premier League, and that if he's over his injuries, then hopefully he'll get that career back onto that trajectory. Whereas Vieira has never really proved himself yet in the Premier League. We've just seen a few glimpses of him.
Yeah, true. I mean, I'd keep Smith Rowe out of the two. Smith Rowe would be 100% profit, and I'm not really an Arsenal accountant, and I hate people that are. But if we were looking to make some money, I think we're going to get more money for Smith Rowe than Vieira. Vieira's not going to get us anything really because he's not proven himself. So that could be where we think there. Listen, in terms of incomings, I've got to ask you this. This has been brought up by Nando the Gunner. We're going to wrap up on this one. Dan, I truly see us going for Rashford. We wanted him 2 seasons ago before he signed his new contract. Would you be upset or happy if we got him and still got a striker? What are your thoughts? Now, I'll give him my thoughts, Julian, on this last night. So I'm not going to go into it too much, but I'm not a fan of this signing. I think it's a lot of money, 375k a week. He's potentially going to want, 40 or 50 million on top of that, Man United, if they want to sell him at all to us. I also think at 26 going on 27, he's not someone who's got huge potential anymore. And also, he's a player that, although Arteta might be able to get something out of, who is he going to play instead of, Trossard or Martinelli? And which one of them are we selling? So I just think it's a weird signing. What do you think?
Yeah, I think from a footballing perspective, you look at him as a player, he could well fit in, but all the baggage and the salary that comes with it,
Mm.
I
And his
think,
attitude as well, Julian. His attitude, I
yeah,
don't like it. I don't like it.
yeah. Look, anyone that's got an attitude, look, he's at Man United. He gets
Mm.
paid a fortune to, he was born in Manchester, so I'm assuming he's probably a Man United fan. He's been there since he's been a young kid. He came through the youth system. So why would you? All right, he doesn't get on with a manager, but that's part of being a player. And when you're on that kind of money, if I get paid £5 an hour for doing something, I do that job to the best of my ability. The fact he's being paid
Crazy.
£375,000 a week, you have to do things to the best of your ability. And with the levels that this guy's at, to me, he's not been playing at the best of his abilities. And I don't think from an age perspective and where he is, the status of him, that he doesn't quite fit the Arsenal profile. So for me, I wouldn't take him in. I think that there's better options. And as Arsene said, one of his quotes, and I do love Arsene quotes, is that Arsenal don't sign superstars; they make them.
Yeah. Yeah. I
Um,
must admit, that was a good
yeah,
quote.
and I like that. And that throughout my years of watching Arsenal, the best Arsenal teams have taken players on the up, young players from less fashionable teams, and made them superstars. And the only superstar that I've seen come to Arsenal and become an even bigger superstar was Dennis Bergkamp. Other than that, all the supposed superstars that have come to Arsenal, from Charlie Nicholas to Mesut Ozil, have diminished in reputation rather than kind of gone on to be even better than they were when we signed them.
Listen, if Marcus Rashford is the player that Mikel Arteta wants, a lot of the fans will suggest that, okay, he's done it with Havertz. Erdegaard was the one he wanted over options. Ben White was the one he wanted over options. And that potentially it would be foolish to question him, right? But I just don't see how this one fits in. Because unless he wants to play and shuffle people around a bit, we've already got two left wingers in Trossard and Martinelli that are fighting each other for their place. Smith Rowe can play out there as well, by the way. It's where he started. I just don't see this one happening. And, Judges was saying to me that he actually would quite like him and he thinks he could play him either through the middle or left and then potentially put Martinelli wide for Saka and have some competition. But I just don't see Rashford as the elite mentality that's needed at Arsenal. I just look at everything about him and I just don't like it. Like his running and running back is not existent. He lets people walk. He's just walking while people are running past him. He's got that. I don't know. There's something about his mentality, Julian. I look at it and I just think you ain't a winner. Like you're not an elite player. I just think, yeah, I just don't think he's the guy that we should be looking at. I can see a player there. It's not like I think he's trash, by the way. A lot of people think I think he's a rubbish player.
When you pay
No,
someone
he's not.
375,000 a week,
Crazy, crazy.
you're looking at someone world class, with everything about him that's world class. And for me, he's not world class, and he's
No.
been nowhere near there for the last few seasons. So what are you paying for? You're paying for a world class player, and you're getting the potential of someone that used to be a world class player that's already made the money. And so many players' contracts, when they get that big contract, I mean, you've only got to look at Ozil. What happened there when they gave him that massive contract? He was
Mm.
just, he's a burden on the team. So no, I definitely
Well,
would.
I was on the terrace yesterday. Terry's a big Man United fan, and he was going to me, if Arsenal get Rashford, I would be scared. I think he would absolutely kill it. He's like, that is what my biggest nightmare is. Now, I understand why he's saying that, but they said that about Welbeck. They were like, "Oh, I don't want Welbeck going to Arsenal. We'll absolutely smash it," and he never did. And I think Danny Welbeck. I'm not saying that Rashford's as bad as Danny Welbeck. I actually mind Welbeck as it goes. I think he give 110%. But I look at it and I think to myself, that is not a player that I look at and go, right, you are ready. That's a bit of a project. That's like, right, I'm going to give you time. A little bit like he did with Havertz. I don't want any more of those players, Julian. I want to be going in, going, right, Declan Rice, you're ready. Bruno Guimaraes, you're ready. Isak, you're ready. None of this, oh, let's work him, give him time, give him a year. Let's see what he can do. I think we're past that. I honestly think we're past that, man.
Yeah, but then the other side of it, which you brushed over, was that we're already pretty well stocked on that side. It's the right hand side that we need. We need some
Exactly.
proper competition for Saka. So what's the point of overstocking on a side where we don't really have any issues? So no, I wouldn't have him on several fronts. And the final nail in the coffin for me is if Lee says it's a good idea, then it's definitely not.
I knew that was coming, man. That's why I brought it up. I knew that was coming. Listen, we're gonna wrap it up there because it's been a pleasure, man, having you on. Big up, man. Thanks so
No,
much for coming on.
I appreciated it. As I said, I've been having withdrawal symptoms. I've not been able to even think about Arsenal. I've had the thought police on me for the last week.
Mate, it's been good to chat to you as always, mate. It's always a pleasure talking to you about football. Yeah, definitely have you back on when you are ready. You'll see Julian on AFTV quite a lot with myself and with Robbie and with Lee and with all the other guys as well. So please make sure that you are tuned in. Guys, you've got to do me a favor. I am less than 800 away from 20k. Let's make sure that we can get there, please. All I need you to do is hit the like and the subscribe button and make sure that we can get there. Please stay tuned and do me a favor. This is going to redirect you to Saeed, who's doing the watch along for the Europa Conference League. Just put in the chat, Dan Potts sent me. That's all you need to do. We're out of here. Take it easy. And as always, up the Arsenal. Laters.